Are we living in a simulation? Everything we know, every person, every event, every emotion, it could all just be an illusion created by a superior civilization or by the design of a divine entity. Our reality could be a sophisticated illusion, a sort of dream orchestrated by forces beyond our understanding. The simulation theory, which in recent years has found many supporters, deeply shakes our certainties and leads us to question the true nature of our existence. Although this is a fascinating and unsettling idea, it is actually not entirely new and has its roots in the oldest philosophical reflections. In this long journey, we will explore the historical context, the philosophical foundations, the technological progress, and the possible evidence suggesting that we might actually be living inside a simulation. But first, how do we do it? As always, we invite you to subscribe to our channel to support our work and to not miss our upcoming videos.
Imagine men living in an underground dwelling shaped like a cave, with a long entrance open to the light, stretching the entire length of the cave. They have been there since childhood, with their legs and necks chained, so they cannot move and can only look straight ahead, unable, because of the chains, to turn their heads.
In his famous dialogue, Plato describes a group of prisoners chained inside a cave. Since birth, these prisoners can only look at one wall of the cave, on which shadows of objects placed behind them are projected, illuminated by a fire. For them, these shadows represent the only reality. Plato uses this metaphor to illustrate how human beings can live in a state of ignorance, confusing appearances for reality. Plato suggests that true knowledge is obtained only by leaving the cave and observing the real world in its fullness. In this context, the allegory of the cave can be considered one of the first examples of reflection on the possibility that what we perceive as real may be only an illusion or a limited representation of the true nature of reality.
But immediately above me, almost beyond my strength, there is the power of an extremely powerful deceiver, and if that's the case, everything I see is illusory.
Jumping forward many centuries, the French philosopher René Descartes offers another important reflection on the nature of reality. In his work, Meditations on First Philosophy, Descartes raises the problem of radical doubt, asking whether everything we perceive is truly real or if it could be deceptive in order to arrive at certain knowledge. Descartes hypothesizes the existence of an evil genius, a very powerful being who could constantly deceive us, making us perceive something that does not actually exist. Descartes' goal was to doubt everything until he arrived at an undeniable truth. I think, therefore I am. The idea of an evil genius may seem similar to the idea of a modern simulation and suggest to us how our sensory experiences could be created or manipulated by a higher entity. Today, the idea that we might be living in a simulation has been revisited and reformulated. Thanks to advances in technology, especially in the fields of computer science and virtual reality, with the development of increasingly realistic video games, advanced artificial intelligences, and powerful digital simulations, the hypothesis that our own reality could be a digital simulation is no longer a purely philosophical concept, but has become a concrete topic of debate among scientists, philosophers, and futurologists. Nick Bostrom, a Swedish philosopher, is one of the main figures who brought the simulation theory back into the spotlight. In 2003, Bostrom formulated an argument known as the simulation hypothesis. According to Bostrom, if a sufficiently advanced civilization had the ability to create sophisticated simulations of reality, then it could create a huge number of simulations. In this scenario, the probability that we ourselves are one of these simulations is statistically high, since there would be many more simulated realities than the single original reality. Nick Bostrom, in his article, "Are You Living in a Computer Simulation?" explains his simulation hypothesis.
With these words, at least one of the following statements is true. The fraction of civilizations at our stage of development that manage to reach a post-human stage is extremely close to zero. The fraction of post-human civilizations that are interested in running simulations of human history is extremely close to zero. The fraction of all observers with our type of experiences who live in a simulation is extremely close to 1.
With this, Bostrom tells us that few technological civilizations survive long enough to develop the ability to create advanced simulations. And even if some civilizations reach this stage, they might not be interested in creating simulations of human life. But if these civilizations develop such technologies and use them widely, then what? It's very likely that most conscious beings would be inside simulations rather than in the original world, because there would be countless simulations compared to the base reality. This is the conceptual basis that makes the idea that our own reality is one of these simulations plausible. But among the main figures who help spread this theory, we find Elon Musk, who, surprising his listeners,
stated, "The chances that we are in a simulation are 99%. If you look at how quickly technology is advancing, it's hard to imagine that we won't reach a point where simulations become indistinguishable from reality."
Musk points out that, given the rapid advancement of technology and our ability to create increasingly realistic virtual worlds, it's hard to imagine that we won't reach a point where simulations become indistinguishable from reality. At this point, it's inevitable to wonder if there is any evidence that all of us are the result of a simulation. We can say that there is no definitive evidence, but there are several unsettling clues that suggest the hypothesis should not be dismissed outright. One of the arguments in favor of the simulation theory is the presence of physical limits in the universe. For example, the speed of light is a maximum limit. Nothing can travel faster than it. This could be seen as a limit imposed by a simulation to save computing resources. In a simulation, having a speed limit means that the system doesn't have to calculate events happening instantaneously over infinite distances, which would reduce the complexity and the computing power required. In video games, for example, there are so-called frame rate limits, which are the number of images per second that the game displays. The more images there are, the smoother the movement appears. However, to save energy and resources, video games often limit the number of images to the minimum necessary for an enjoyable experience. In the same way, you can think that the universe imposes a limit like the speed of light, to avoid having to calculate everything with unlimited detail, thus saving computational resources. But what some might consider a revealing clue is the presence of errors or problems, which are called glitches. Some believe that strange things that happen in the universe could be similar to glitches in a simulation, for example, dark matter and dark energy. They are two mysterious things that scientists still can't explain well, and these could be parts of the simulation that we don't understand. A more concrete example of a possible glitch is the Mandela effect. The Mandela effect is when a group of people remembers an event differently from how it actually happened. It is named after the former South African president, Nelson Mandela, because many people mistakenly remember that he died in prison in the 1980s, while in reality he was released and then became president. This kind of collective error might make people think that something in the simulation has been changed, creating confusion in our memory. Another example of a glitch is déjà vu, that feeling of experiencing something that has already happened. Those of you who have seen the movie Matrix will remember that déjà vu was the result of a manipulation of the Matrix. The movie, as you can imagine, is inspired by this very theory. But the most important clues come from quantum physics, which actually shows us very strange events that could be interpreted as evidence of the simulation. One of the most notable is quantum entanglement, where two particles seem to be connected even if they are very far apart from each other. It's as if they communicate instantly, a bit like two characters in a video game who share information immediately thanks to the program that controls them. Another concept is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, which says that we cannot know exactly both the position and the velocity of a particle. At the same time, it's as if the universe decides not to show all the details at once. And the reason could be what we mentioned earlier, saving resources. It's a bit like what happens in video games, where the details of the environment are loaded only when the player looks at them. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle seems incredibly similar, showing only what is needed when it is needed. We get another clue about the simulation by looking at our universe, which seems to follow very precise mathematical rules. Based on this, the physicist James Gates discovered that some of the equations describing the fundamental fields of the universe seem to contain similar structures to error-correcting codes, which are used in computers to detect and correct errors in data. These error-correcting codes are essential to ensure that digital data is transmitted or processed correctly, without being corrupted by interference. Gates found these codes specifically in a particular class of equations called supersymmetry equations. Supersymmetry is a theory that seeks to unify the fundamental forces of nature and predicts the existence of superpartners for every known particle.
When I found the error-correcting codes in the supersymmetry equations, I realized that they were exactly like the ones found in browsers to correct errors in transmitted data. This made me think that we might actually be living in some kind of code, just like in a computer simulation.
In other words, it's as if the universe has a self-correcting system to make sure everything works properly. Just like a video game or software that makes sure there are no errors so it can run smoothly. If the universe worked like a computer, these error-correcting codes could be proof that we're inside a simulation, where the laws of physics have been written to ensure the whole system stays stable and consistent. Asking ourselves who wrote these rules, there's another aspect to analyze: consciousness. How can we actually explain our awareness? Even in this case, some scholars suggest that our consciousness, that is, what makes us aware, could also be part of a simulation. It could be a program uploaded into the simulation. In this sense, our brain would be like a computer processing the software of the reality we live in. If our consciousness were actually a program inserted into the simulation, this could explain many of the mysteries related to consciousness itself. For example, it could explain inexplicable phenomena like intuition, out-of-body experiences, or even the extraordinary abilities of some people, such as prodigious memory or psychic abilities. It could be that these mysterious events are features or bugs of the program, or that some people have more direct access to the mechanisms of this simulation, allowing them to do things that seem impossible or supernatural. In light of all these considerations, it's interesting to explore two possible scenarios. The theory that we are the result of an advanced civilization that created a simulation, and the idea that our existence is the result of a divine plan. According to the simulation hypothesis, an advanced civilization technologically superior to ours created a huge simulation in which we are living. This civilization would have the power to design virtual worlds indistinguishable from reality, in which every aspect of the universe, from the laws of physics to our very consciousness, would have been programmed and constructed. In this context, the beings who developed the simulation could be considered almost divine compared to us, since they possess abilities and knowledge far beyond our understanding. The hypothesis suggests that these advanced civilizations may have created many populations and mere simulations, each of which hosts countless conscious beings, which makes it very likely that our reality is one of these simulations. And we can even imagine that these very simulations might be capable of creating simulated worlds themselves. On the other hand, the traditional conception of a transcendent God offers us a different view, but not an entirely incompatible one. Instead of a technological simulation, we can consider that the universe is the result of a divine plan, a higher intelligence that chose to create and govern the laws of physics and our existence. According to this perspective, the universe would not be a random product, but would have been intentionally designed with a purpose. Both the simulation hypothesis and the divine design hypothesis lead us to consider that our reality is the result of intentional creation. In both cases, the universe appears as a system designed with laws and principles that ensure its functioning. Whether it is an advanced civilization that has written a program to simulate our reality, or a deity that has created the universe with a purpose, both hypotheses lead us to reflect on how complex and mysterious our existence is. Perhaps it is not so important to determine which of the two is true, as it is to recognize that reality might be much deeper than we can understand, pushing us to always explore new questions and to seek higher meanings. At this point, we are really curious to know your opinion. Let us know in the comments what you think. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new insights. Until the next story.